precisely what you were doing, which is in the inner city itself, pointing out to people that their life is in their own hands, that they can move themselves forward, that that's how it always happens for all people everywhere. And that the kiss of death is to keep relying on what the government can do. There's nothing worse.
Can you believe it? That's right. I'm still here, living in this tent for 100 days, from November the 20th to February 28th, bring you the issues and awareness that you need to know about the violence on the south side of Chicago, but also to raise as much money as possible to build a community center on this much needed block called O Block. It's called O Block because it's named after a young man named O.D. Perry who was shot and killed. The gangs picked up the O in his name and started calling it O Block. Well, we decided we like the O, but we're going to change it to Opportunity Block. I want to thank Fox for giving me the opportunity every single day to bring to you Rooftop Revelations, where I share with you my thoughts, viewpoints, and opinions on matters as it relates to violence in Chicago and issues that we're dealing with across our great country. For a long time, we've had Black conservative intellectuals make the argument against post-60s liberalism and the argument for true Black power, in the sense that we must seize this power of our own personal agency. Now here I am on the ground trying to take these principles that Black conservatives like Thomas Sowell and Shelby Steele have articulated and apply them to everyday people. I'm on the grassroots end of all of this and putting the talk into action, so to speak. As we always see in America, ideas are planted and then the action usually follows. I'm so happy today to have a guest with us to talk about these very conservative ideas. Shelby Steele. Thank you, Mr. Steele, for being with us today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Other than enjoying that nice warm weather in Arizona, it's a blessing to have you with us. You know, I am, everyone knows that I love Thomas Sowell and I love Shelby Steele. There's not a moment that I don't get that I try to tell people about my affection for both of you. And so I'm really glad to have you with us today. And I want to ask you some questions that I have written down because I didn't want to miss them. And I want to just jump right in. You grew up and you lived through the 60s. What was the moment that you woke up to the realities of post-60s liberalism, which many call the Great Society programs? What was that moment?
Well, I suppose it happened specifically in the early 1970s. I see 1965, the Civil Rights, 1964, the Civil Rights Act as the turning point, the moment when Blacks really came into freedom for the very first time, when the President of the United States signed the bill saying, in effect, yes, we've abused these people for centuries, and that was wrong. I know no other nation that has been morally brave enough to do something like that. America did. We as Blacks then sort of took that and I think we sort of thought there was a lot of power, therefore, in the fact that America had done us so wrong. And so rather than focus on taking ourselves forward at that moment, we fell into a terrible trap of dependency in the very society we had just won freedom from. We argued that America needed to take responsibility for moving us ahead. And so we put our energies into Black power, into Black this and Black identity, and liberal politics, and liberal in the government, and what the government can do, and legislation. And we all this thought that's our hope, that's our promise. In fact, what we did was take our own fate, which we had just won, we put it in the hands of other people. And that's where I think we made a mistake. In the 70s, the early 70s, after I worked in East St. Louis, I worked in government programs for a number of years, and in the inner cities, trying to do what you're doing today, actually doing today, and not getting very far. And it occurred to me that we had made this profound mistake of asking, in a sense, other people, protesting. The era of protest was over with. We'd won our point in 1964, but yet we kept on. We protest today. Protest will never work. It's done all it can do for us. We now have to take responsibility for ourselves. Anyway, it was I took a trip to Algeria, where the Black Panthers were, in a sense, hiding out, and I visited them and I spent some time with them, and I began to see the emptiness of this idea of Black power in some political revolutionary sense. That what we really had to do was go back. We were lucky to be in America. It was full of opportunity. Didn't mean racism was gone, but it meant that opportunity was everywhere. And we have, I believe, been literally stalked by opportunity since the 60s. Everywhere in American life, people are trying to give us possibilities and opportunities to develop. I thought that's the way to go. Precisely what you were doing, which is in the inner city itself, pointing out to people that their life is in their own hands, that they can move themselves forward, that's how it always happens for all people everywhere. And that the kiss of death is to keep relying on what the government can do. There's nothing worse for us.
You know, Mr. Steele, you know, people call you a Black conservative intellectual. I know before the label, you were a Black militant of sorts. And I want to ask you, have you really changed at all? Are you still the same guy that believes in this Black power, so to speak, in the sense that we can do it on our own? We don't need to depend on all of these apparatuses and government to help us. Are you that same guy?
I feel exactly the same way. I have not changed my values since I was a little boy, and my parents were involved in the civil rights movement and so forth. I believe our fate is in our own hands, and that we have been seduced by all sorts of forces in the larger society to put our fate, Black politics is designed almost for no other reason, no other purpose than to put our fate in other people's hands, to keep believing we don't get a voting rights bill. Well, can you imagine how disrespectful that is? The saying that we have to have a piece of legislation before we have enough sense to go down to the voting booth and vote. That infantilizes us. It treats us as children. It robs us of any possibility of self-respect.
You know, we've had this Black conservative intellectual movement, you know, for a long time now. And do you think now is a time for people like me to step up and start applying these principles? I know I've been doing it for 22 years now. And do you think we need more of us? Is that the key to a better future for Black America, for people like me to put the ideas that you've been sharing and ideas that Thomas Sowell have been sharing for years? Is it time to put them into action? Is it time to apply them?
Absolutely. To me, that's the test of everything at this point. We now should know, it should be common knowledge within Black America, that the government of the United States is not our way out. Our way out is ourselves. The government must enforce the rights and so forth in a democratic society that are due all people. But the government can't teach your 2-year-old child to read, your 3-year-old, 4-year-old. They can't teach your child what good manners are, how to love themselves, how to appreciate themselves, and yet ask something of themselves at the same time. Mothers and fathers do that. So we need more mothers and fathers to be doing that. You're doing that in your community center. You're telling these young people a good, happy life is possible if you develop yourself to possess it. Put yourself in a position to possess it. That's the hope of Black America. Not everything else has been tried. It's all failed.
You know, when you think about the Black conservative principles and ideas, Mr. Steele, which do you feel is the most relevant to communities like mine at this very moment? When you think about these ideas, you know, what's the most relevant for us in this moment, in this time, in this season?
I think one of the most important things in human life is parental love for children. Love in the sense, not in the sense of just heaping, kisses and all that sort of thing, but loving children so that they learn to appreciate themselves. They like themselves. They take risks in life. They learn, they expand, they grow. When a group does that, you look up one day and the whole group is ahead. The whole group is solid and strong and able to confront all manner of things, all manner of difficulties. But that responsibility for development has to come back to Black Americans ourselves. We have to do that. The reason I just love what you're doing is because that's exactly what you're saying. The power for overcoming is within us. And it's not some complicated, overwhelming thing. It's good old-fashioned, love your child and ask something from them.
Yeah. Well, as always, I salute you and I thank you. I'll say again, and I say to everybody, if you want to know what Black conservatism is all about, read Thomas Sowell and Shelby Steele, and you'll walk away knowing what needs to be done. I'm trying to live those principles that you teach and write about, and I want to just say thank you for being with us again on another Rooftop Revelation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's indeed my honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to thank Eli Steele for producing this show. I want to thank Terrell for filming, and of course, I am so very thankful to Fox for giving me this platform. They didn't have to give me this platform, but they give it to me, and I want to say thank you. God bless you. God bless America. And until tomorrow, as I always say, another Rooftop Revelation. Peace.